CQ 40 meters, CQ 40 meters, CQ 40 meters, CQ calling CQ, CQ calling CQ. This is November 9, Delta Delta, November 9, Delta Delta, Norway 9, Denmark, November 9, Delta Delta, Norway 9, Denmark calling CQ 40 and listening.
November 9, Delta Delta, this is Whiskey Zero, Echo India, W0EI in Kansas. Do you copy?
Whiskey Zero, Echo India. Thank you very much. Name here is Mike. We're located in Stockbridge, Georgia, about 30 miles straight south of downtown Atlanta in the suburb of Stockbridge. You got a good signal. I'll give you a reading on the over, but it sounds like it's over 9. So we'll look for you, or we'll give you a better reading right after this. Over.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Yes, your signal is also a little bit over S9. I'd say about 5 over. And the name here is Charlie, and the location here is Central Kansas, a town called Holyrood, which is really smack in the middle of Kansas. And it's a nice little town of about 500 people. I kind of know where you are because I used to work in Marietta. Which is, of course, very close to where you are. And I had to go down your way to pick up a fifth wheel, deluxe type thing that I bought when I was working in Marietta for General Electric. This is about 15 years ago, a long time ago, maybe 20, more like 20. Oh my God, time goes by. So yeah, you're a little bit over SI easily because on my receiver I have a normal position, which does include a preamplifier built into the Yaesu FT1000 Delta, and I'm not even using that. I'm just going into the audio, which is just like it's a standard input without the extra preamplification, which you don't really need most of the time, right? So anyway, doing okay here. We are using the obviously the FT1000 Delta. It's a old unit, but it's a great one, been well maintained. And up on the roof, we've got a vertical sloper and fed halfway. In other words, the first 18 feet of it, I guess, are vertical, and then you have the rest, about 50-something feet, maybe 60, is horizontal, but on a slope going down slightly. And the max height is about 40 feet, above ground, and it slopes down to maybe 35. So it's a nice little antenna that I built myself. So I can't really see its kind of name on it, but I tried to kind of build it right. And it also has not only just a 49-to-1 unknown, but it's got a 1-to-1 balun that I built also. And so right now running, let's take a look here. We're running just a little over 100 watts right now. We can do 200 if we need to, but sounds like you got me okay over there. Anyway, just in case I'm fading out with QSB, I'll send it back to you there, Mike. NN9DD, nice call. This is W0EI.
W0EI, November 9, Delta Delta returning, and no fade on that signal. It's very solid. You're between 10 and 20 over. Just nice and solid, good audio. Everything's working great there on the Yaesu. And I used to have one of the original Yaesu 101F, what was it? Not FT. Yaesu FT 101D, ZD 101ZD, I guess is what it was. That was one of my first radios. I still got the very first radio I ever had, which is an old Hot Water 101. I haven't put it on the radio in about a year. I probably ought to fire it up one of these days and make sure it's still working so I can send it off if I need to before everybody who knows anything about those things is no longer with us. Unfortunately, that's becoming a reality. We're running a ICOM 7610 100 barefoot watts into a 102-foot G5 RV up about 60 feet. And, it seems to do a good job for me. My antenna's sagging a little bit in the middle, so it's probably not quite 60 feet. It's probably maybe 40 feet in the middle and is more of a V right now because I had a center wire that was holding the middle up break here over the winter, and I got to go up and shoot a new line up in the tree. So one of these days we'll have to go out and do it. But barefoot in an ICOM 7610, running a Heil microphone into a G5 RV. That's our operating conditions here.
Okay, sounds great, Mike. And I did kick on the preamp on the receiver front end, and you're doing a little over 10 over 9 with your 100 watts there. Sounds good. The high microphone sounds fine. And I've got a kind of a fancier than standard. I mean, I've got the standard mics, right? I mean, I've got the Yaesu MD1. I've got the handheld, whatever that is. I've got a D104. I've never even used it. And but right now we're using a let's see, what do we got here? Electro Voice RE20, which feeds into a preamp called a Triton Germanium, which is supposed to give I find it gives more interesting sound. That's all that I'll say about it. It's more interesting, it's more involving, it's mostly used by musicians. They like that germanium sound, which to me just has it's like it grabs you. It's like if somebody's playing, say, classical guitar, or even any kind of guitar, just guitar solo, it just focuses you in on what they're doing, and it sounds strangely more musical. I don't understand what's going on. And then from there, I need amplification, right? So I need 48 volts rather, and that comes from a stomp box, which is also used by musicians, which has XLR in, out, and 48 volts, phantom power, blah, blah, blah. And that works out okay. It's a little tiny thing, which is nice because small is beautiful. And it just, takes the signal and boosts it up a bit. And then from there, I've got my own microphone, rigging done. I created my own input there for the mic with all its 8, possible input deals there. And I've got this going in there, and I just adjust the gain on the stomp box to match an ALC of, keeps it more or less in the green. And I like it. It seems to do a good job. So, people don't seem to have any trouble understanding what I'm saying. And let's see, what else we got going here? Well, of course, it's even later for you. Right now, it's almost 20 of 2 or something like that. And it's 20 of 1 over here in Kansas. And I'm not sweating it. I took a little nap, so. But at any rate, I want to hold it too much for you, just in case you got to get going or whatever you got to do there, Mike. But I'm glad to chat with you, to be sure. And I've got to give a few haircuts in the morning, if you can believe that. Over.
Very good, very good. And no, I'm in no hurry, but bail when you need to. I am retired and don't really have anything to do during the day, so I often catch an afternoon nap and spend a little time on the radio at night and sleep in the morning and just kind of relax, I guess. Kind of no real plan, so it works out well. But I kind of lied to you. I was sitting here looking at what I'm running, really, and I'm on the remote side of my radio, which is still local and attached and everything. I'm just running it through the PC right now. So I'm actually talking on a Logitech headset, and it usually does pretty good as well. So the PR71 is sitting over here on the side, but I'm not actually using that right now. So we're just using a $39 Logitech, and it does well on our remote operations. So I'm very happy with that. But I've got some off-board audio gear that I'll throw in line sometimes, not very often, because it's hard to set up, and it takes a lot of fiddling with. And if somebody twinkles with it or comes in and turns a knob, or the maid, while doing the dusting, bumps it, throws a knob out of whack, it takes a while to get it back in order, because it's a Behringer X-Air system. It's a mixer with all the different digital sounds and goodies and compressors and all that stuff on it. And, you really got to tune the output on that thing way, way down so that you don't overdrive the radio, make it sound like crap on the outside. So I've got to probably need to just put a box in there and bring the output power down on the coming out of the little mixer here, so that I don't have much going into the radio. But it takes some adjusting to get it to use, so I don't use it much, and I've never really found that it makes much of a difference because the radio just puts out a pretty good sound anyway. Over.
Sounds good, Mike. Sounds like good. Really, you got it going nicely over there. And yeah, I got my stuff set up. I was surprised because I had been wiring things differently before. It wasn't working too well. So I know what you mean about setting and controls being kind of finicky sometimes. So actually, when I got everything set up right with this Stomp box, I took a picture of the darn thing on the gain especially, so that just in case, you know, I mess it with doing something else, that I can set it back this way again. It is nice to be able to use the Electro Voice mic because it's on a boom. So I can use a foot switch. I can also use it on Vox. Okay, right, that's true. But I usually just use the foot switch. I find that it works a little better for me, and I don't like the the need to kind of like space my wording such that the box doesn't trip. And I just prefer just to use a foot pedal. So I got one of those wired in, and it works great, and I'm really happy to have it. It's nice being here on 40 meters. My 10 to 80 meter 10-cent half wave does have the best SWR here on 40, and you know, from right about here going up to about, I don't know, 72, 60 or something like that, it's just like dead flat. It's just one-to-one. So I've got a tuner, but I don't even need it here. And I also, Mike, I've got a little test that I need to do here, not now, but probably in about a week, getting in an extension cord for 220. I picked up about a year ago a SB220 from a fellow over in Colorado, and it was not working right. So cosmetically, it was actually really quite nice. But it was not working. He says every time he tried to put it on, it would just trip the breaker. So I think, okay, fine. I didn't even try to put it on. I just bought a bunch of the kits, you know, the upgrade kits you can get for the SB220, put in just about everything you can think of. And all I did so far is just power it on and check the voltage, right? So that's a good test. It doesn't give me any output really, but it's a good test to get in. The voltages were correct, you know, like 30, 100, whatever it was correct, and that's wired for 220. Supposedly the amplifier is a little happier on 220 than it is on 110. For 110, you need a lot of amperage, and it's going to draw down your voltage if you don't, have enough of the right kind of wire and don't have the right circuit breaker in there. You might trip a breaker. So I just found it easier to wire 220, which it is now, and I have a way of getting a couple outlets for 220 in here. And good Lord willing, in about a week, I should have that ready to go. I had to get a special cable for my Yaesu to be able to connect to it, and it's not a problem because I have the soft start and I have the soft key and all that, so that my Yaesu is not going to see 100 volts of AC or anything like that coming back in. It's just going to be very low voltage to make that thing work, but assuming it does. I mean, this thing was not used much. It was built in 78, and beautiful build quality, but I had to replace a bunch of stuff, and of course redo the wiring and all that, and basically, put all the biases down directly to ground instead of going through the chokes and all that came with it originally. They were beautifully wired in, but they're all gone now. There needs to be a good consensus about how to go about doing one of these things. So anyway, hopefully we'll get that on the air and give that a try, and maybe that'll give us another couple S units. Over.
Oh, it definitely will. It definitely will, and I have no doubt it's going to work. If your voltages are right when you fire it up, I suppose there's some other stuff that could go wrong, but I always find if that all works out when you plug it in, it'll be fine. So you said you're going to are you having to put a jumper, a longer 220 cable on it, or an extension cord 220 on it?
Well, yeah, I put a. You have to do a few things. Obviously, inside the amp, you have to change the positions of the jumpers inside the amp, and there's also another modification that you have to do. It has to do with your filament transformer. If you don't change a certain wire on the filament transformer, when you go to 220, it's not a given, but there's a risk you could cook your filament transformer, and that's a pain in the neck to replace and kind of pricey. You'd rather not have to do that. So basically there's an addendum, a service bulletin that came out from Heath way back when, saying if you're going to switch over to 220, just change this wire from here to there, as well as doing the jumpers. And I also, of course, put a 220, I put a 15 amp 220 plug on. You get the 15 amp, you got the 20 amp. You know, I put a 15 amp on it, and it still got the same. I didn't even change the stock cord, which always seems like it's okay. It's not cracking or anything like that, but I probably should have replaced it actually. But I put a nice socket on there, and that's the what do they call it? They throw it a 6-15P is the NEMA name for it. Not that people say you don't need that kind of stuff for info, but just in case you ever want to do it yourself, that's what they call the darn thing. And yeah, so I'll have to basically put it next to my Yaesu, right? Okay, and I will, there's a special plug that you got to put into a DIN socket on the back of the Yaesu that goes into your basically it's a key function that triggers the relay inside the SB220. And in addition to that, I have an additional bypass for that connection, which means that if I want to leave the amp on but don't want to use it, I can just click a switch that's in my hand, a little hand switch, and it will just push my signal from my Yaesu through the SB220 without doing any amplification. And then if I want to go back to, putting out the big watts again, I just click it again. My gut feeling is that it will probably do on SSB. I've got a pretty nice meter here, so I'll be able to check. It's got a peak hold. It's one of those Daiwa CN901 HP3. It'll take 3,000 watts, maximum. And I expect it, it'll probably max out at around 1,200 PEP, something like that. And 900 or 1,000 for CW. I mean, CW, I've never really had to use power. I don't know about you, but I like CW. And already I've got 200 watts. I mean, how much power do you need on CW, right?
Absolutely agree. I mean, I don't do a lot of CW just because I'm not very good at it. I mean, I can do what I call some contest CW and run, maybe 20, 25 words a minute. And that's depending on the contest, depending on what I have to copy, it slows down a little bit. But so I'm not a big CW guy. But yeah, I find when I run anything on CW, there's nothing I can't do with 100 watts. I mean, I can break pileups with 100 watts. I can work all the way around the world. I'm not going to be the first guy he calls when we're hitting a pileup, but I'll get through eventually. So, I mean, 100 watts is really all you need. 100, 200 would be nice. 500 would maybe be great for a contest, but these guys running 12, 1500, in contest CW. That's just showing off, I guess, to me, because you just really don't need it. You can get through on half that and be just fine. But no, your 220 sounds great. I'd like to find me a good 200 or 220 to go with the Hot Water 101 that I got as my first radio, because I've got that, and it comes with the old power supply, and I got a speaker that was original Heathcat speaker that came out with that radio. So I'd love to complete the whole station look and just have the amplifier and everything, and have an old vintage station set up here in the shack to go along with all the modern stuff. So one of these days we'll get to it, but I need to throw that old Hot Water 101 on the air one of these days and see how she works, make sure she's still doing her job.
Yeah, the HW101, I mean, it's a famous rig from back in the day. I think I've only seen one. It was when I was a kid, and I went to one of these, field days, nights, whatever, and somebody was running a HW101. There was a fair bit of youth gear there, and a friend of mine, he had youth gear. He had the, what is it now, the SB102 or whatever, and for myself, I actually used a Heath transmitter when I was a novice back in 1970. Let's see, what was that now? That was the Heath, it was the, I think it was the 100B is what they called it, and it might be HW100B anyway. It was a big behemoth. I think it weighed about 100 pounds. And, of course, I was just using it for 75 watts back then, and I was rock bound on crystals, so it was a little bit of a different deal. And I used for my receiver, I was using a Collins 75A4 that I really wanted, so I worked a whole summer for my dad for $1 an hour. And then from Connecticut, we drove down to New Jersey, and there was a guy there that had two of them. We picked up the cheaper one, and it was great. It really was a great receiver. And, the 75A4 was awesome, and I was able to scrounge a relay to go so that I could work it, with the transmitter. And I was just having a great old time talking all over the world with that thing, using more so than 75 watts. It was kind of a different deal back in that day. And I can't remember what was the name of that thing. It was a something 100B. And it was a monster built about 1960. And my cousin let me borrow that. And that thing was so heavy. I mean, I think it really was close to 100 pounds. There was a lot of iron in that thing. And I remember I made my own antenna as a novice, and it was just an inverted V. It was really pretty rough. And I just stapled it to my roof, right? So nobody even knew I had an antenna. Nobody knew. I was probably causing TBI to everybody in the whole neighborhood. But nobody knew I was there because they couldn't see my antenna. So anyway, and I remember on rainy days, the output tubes on the Heath transmitter, DX, that's what it's called, the DX100B. That's what it was. That probably rings a bell with you too, Mike. So I'll be the SB220. I've never run a amp at all. I was going anyway to pick up some old Collins gear from this guy. He had a couple of things. He had a KWM2A, and he had what the heck did he have now? He was the S-line transmitter, 32X3, I think it was. Yeah, that's what it was. And he had that, plus he had a KWM2A, and things up from him. And then I said, hey, you wouldn't happen to have an amp too? And that's how I got the SB220. He didn't want to go through and fix it. He wanted to build his own from scratch, which is like, okay, kudos for that. And so I guess I made a little donation to his amp fund so that he could create something that he'd be happy with, which, if you build it yourself, it's like, well, that's pretty impressive. Speaking of power, one thing I really like that I did not expect when I got this Yaesu. The Yaesu basically, it goes from 20 to 200 watts, right? That's the spec. But this thing has been cared for and babied and modified. And this thing will go all the way down to 1 watt. 1 watt peak to peak SSB. And on CW it goes down to 1.3 watts. And it's like when I noticed that, I said, wow, did somebody really paid attention to that? I don't know even how they did it. So that's an unusual modification, but I'm really happy about it because I like to do QRP just to kind of see what can you get. And we recently, this last weekend we had the winter ham fest, and there was a lot of guys that were doing both, voice and CW. And I made a contact. It it was not a strong signal, right? But it was a contact that was confirmed from my QTH here in Kansas all the way up to, I forget the name of the town, but it was in it was northern British Columbia, Canada, with 1 watt SSB. It was straight line. The driving distance is different, but the straight line flying distance was 1,788 miles using just 1 watt. Over.
Yeah, no, that with CW it's a lot easier than with phone, but I've done both. That I had. Well, I've got a couple of different rigs, but I got 2 of them out of my brother's house, just sitting there. I used to run a remote station out there, and I had a QRP rig out there for when we went out on his 4-wheelers, and then one for the house that I ran as a remote rig. And Tree took down that antenna, so it just sits there now, and I need to have him send it back if he's not going to put the antenna back up. But where was I going with that? Oh, I've got an 817 out there, one of the Yaesu, little mobile or hand, it's dang near handheld rigs that I got it for running 2 meter and 220 440 for doing satellite work, and it also did HF as QRP. So I used to use that thing, and when I had it when I was living in Kentucky, and that was probably the peak 2 solar cycle peaks ago. And I used to run it, there was a summer where that was my only radio, and I used to hit up into, run a DX up into Europe from Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, and that's, like you, probably a little farther, probably like 3,000, 4,000 miles into Northern Europe. And, but I did that with 5 watts, but either way, that's still very impressive. And, I think low power is kind of fun sometimes. I wouldn't want to get stuck in that mode and have that as my only way of operating, but I think it's kind of fun sometimes to just get out there and do that. And back to the Heath kits real quick. I did have a pair of Heath kits before the 101 Hot Water. I say the Hot Water 101 is my first rig because it was my first transceiver. I had an Apache Mohawk and a Heathkit Apache and a Heathkit Mohawk as my transmitter and receiver, separate pieces. And talk about heavy. I understand what you mean when you talk about heavy, because those 2 things were big boys. About twice the size of the Hot Water 101 and probably 3 times the weight. But yeah, I kind of wish I still had those, but I don't. But the Heath kit is, it's fun to pull out every now and then, because everybody always tells me how good it sounds, and I just get worried that one day it's going to blow some tubes or resistors or transistors, that I ought to just send it in now and have somebody go through and replace all the leakers and look for anything that's going to fail or near failing or could fail, put new tubes in it, and have it ready for another 100 years. Over.
Very good, Mike. Hey, I just kicked the power up a little bit to about 200 because a little QSB going on there, so I just want to really do a quick check. Do you still have a copy? Over.
Oh yeah, no, you're still, you had dropped on the previous transmissions a little bit, but you're 5.9 solid still.
Okay, very good, and very good on the HW101. Obviously, it's wonderful, really, to have something like that you saved all those years from, the early time when you first got into ham radio. I've been through, a number of different things over the course of the last, well, honestly, 50-something years, right? And so I have no idea where my 75A4 went. I know that I was pretty happy about, selling it when I got my General. I ended up getting a Yaesu that would put out something like 400 to 500 watts. It was an insane radio. I think they called it the FTDX 400 or something like that. And it had 4 finals that were tubes. And so it put out some serious power. And I used that in combination with one of my other hobbies, Mike, which was chess. And I had a schedule every Friday night with a guy in a different state to play a chess match, and we had a great deal of fun doing that. It must have sounded was the move that was made. So those are old days, old times, and now, of course, you know, I've got two Yaesus here. I've got a 990 as well, which is the baby brother of the 1000. It works good, but it does need to have the capacitors and the power supply. It's got the AC supply. I can run it off of DC now. I can use it on the AC supply, but the capacitors are dying, so I'm not going to do that. I've got a kit coming in that has all 201 capacitors in the entire radio. I don't know if I'll do all 201, but I'm certainly going to redo the power supply, but I might just do the whole thing. Once you get it apart, it's not that bad. It's got these plug-in, plug-out boards. It's pretty modular and should be fairly easy to go. On the big Yaesu here, I've got the roofing filter, which just makes the dynamic range kind of like a bulletproof thing. It's like, you know, I don't know what I would have to do to overload it. The nearest guy is like, you know, about 7-8 miles away, and you know, even he can't overload it, not even come close. So anyway, it's all good. Listen, Mike, only because your signal was fading. It was getting a little difficult to pick you up. And that's a problem that I've got, I guess, is that my antenna, you know, not being super long, it does seem to do better on transmit than it does on receive, which, I mean, it does fine on receive, no, you know, complaints, but I have found that there are people sometimes that can hear me, and I do have a hard time hearing them, and I'm in a tiny little town. It's not like there's a whole lot of static from local people, but there is sometimes. Anyway, so it's all good. Mike, I really want to appreciate your having the CQ there. Once again, I like your call. November 9 Delta Delta. That's pretty classy. And I think it sounds pretty good in coverage too. I'm just kind of putting it in my head. It's like it would have kind of a sing-songy kind of a sound to it. That's very nice. Well, appreciate the QSO, Mike. I'm going to send it back to you there, and hoping that we still got a decent copy. And I really hope that we can do this again sometime. You know, if I hear you out there, obviously I'm not going to forget this call sign you've got, and I'll give you a shout. Maybe we can pick up where we left off. So, November 9 Delta Delta. This is Whiskey Zero Echo India. Back to you.
Very good. Whiskey Zero Echo India, November 9 Delta Delta returning. Yeah, fine business. Please do look me up again. Would love to chat some more. It was my pleasure, and hopefully we can do it again. I did forget to mention to you, I was just messing around with my streaming software. I've been streaming this whole thing live on YouTube. So when I'm done here in a little bit, I'll probably hang out for a little while. I'll stop the broadcast, and it'll go and turn itself up. So tomorrow morning you should be able to look yourself up on YouTube just by looking up my call. And then under YouTube Live, there's a thing with tonight's date on it. And you should be able to find yourself. You'll be about the only one on it. I think you're the only person I talked to tonight. So we'll let you go and look for you again. 73 Charles W0EI, November 9 Delta Delta clear.
Have a good night, Mike. Thanks so much for the chat. Bye now.
CQ40, CQ40, CQ40 meters, CQ, 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 CQ40, CQ40, CQ40 meters, CQ calling CQ, CQ calling CQ. This is November 9, Delta Delta, November 9, Delta Delta, November 9, Delta Delta calling CQ40 meters and listening. CQ calling CQ, CQ calling CQ, November 9, Delta Delta, November 9, Delta Delta, Norway 9, Denmark calling CQ40 and listening. November 9, Delta Delta is clear and QRT.